Good evening. I call this meeting to order at 5 p.m. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call. All directors are present. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda tonight.
I'll move the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The agenda is approved. Moving on to public comment. Are there any members of the public here in person that would like to make a public comment? No? Okay. And I don't see any members of the public online. So we will move on to community reports.
Sam
No.
Shoup.
Yeah, see Sam. No in person. Sam, I see you on there. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Hope you all are as well. Thanks so much for having me, and I apologize for that glare on me right there. Hope everyone had a good New Year. I know I wasn't attending the first meeting y'all had this year, but hope that went well. I just wanted to give a brief update on, brief county update for y'all. At the last board meeting, we had our semi-annual reorganization of the board. So in that, Supervisor Cook made the initial motion to nominate, or to re-nominate Supervisor Don Rao to return as chair, which was approved unanimously, as well as to nominate Supervisor Joe Baca of the 5th District to serve as our new vice chair, which was also unanimous. So we're very excited to have this leadership team for the next couple years here at the county and on the board. Looking forward to working with them. Additionally, that same board meeting, which was back on the 14th, the board approved the creation of a new commission for the county, the Federal Affairs Commission, which will be chaired by Supervisor Cook. Supervisor Rao will also be a member. This commission is designed to facilitate relationships with our elected officials at the federal level to help make sure the county is, listened to fairly at that level of government. We're really looking forward to using the supervisor's well-established contacts during his time in DC to help facilitate that and make sure, we're not missing out on any grant opportunities or anything of that nature. So we're excited to see that bear fruit in the coming few months or so. Additionally, there was a board item approved that I wanted to highlight for everybody, a contract with the Family Assistance Program to provide management and staffing for transitional shelter facilities countywide. These are for transitional age youth. This will provide them with temporary housing, food services, access to phones, any necessary clothing or medicine or medical attention that they may need in an otherwise rather underserved group. So we're pretty excited about board items like that being approved and looking forward to seeing that implemented. That's pretty much all I had for everybody. Just wanted to highlight the reorganization here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Sam? No? Go ahead. Sorry.
We missed you at last week's legislative committee. Hope you'll make the next one.
I plan to. I apologize for that.
That's okay. In addition, any timeline on the resurfacing of Phelan Road? Any timeline, guideline on that? Any word?
No, I sent a follow-up to our Public Works team just earlier today, so hoping to hear back, and as soon as I do have anything, I'll make sure to send it your way.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much.
All right, thanks. Have a good night. All right, and I see Fire is here. You're up.
Good evening.
Eric Spies, Battalion Chief for San Bernardino County Fire Department. Just with a quick update with some call stats for local Fire Station 10. So unit specific, over the last 30 days, Medic Engine 10, the primary engine out of Phelan, ran 210 calls. The significant calls were 6 structure fires, 4 vegetation fires, 26 other fires, and that consists of vehicle fires, motorhome fires, rubbish fires, any oddball type fires. Traffic collisions, they ran 11, and of the 11, 2 of those required extensive extrication where we actually have to cut the cars to get occupants out. 2 ambulances in Phelan. The first one, Medic Ambulance 10, ran a total of 133 medical calls. And Medic Ambulance 10A, the second ambulance we added less than a year ago, they ran 130 calls for the month. So just with the current fires, everything going on in LA County, just a reminder to everyone that we are truly proving that fire season is never over. Unfortunately, this year we haven't seen precipitation. So while the temperatures have dropped, fuel moistures are still down, and then our Santa Anas, which we typically get this time of year, they're making fire growth exponential because of that, the fuel moistures that we're seeing. So we're still encouraging everyone to be ready, even though it seems crazy in the month of January going into February that we're still dealing with this. But we encourage them to go to our website, sbcfire.org, and look at the Ready, Set, Go program, the TENS program. A lot of those programs we have developed to assist people with evacuations and preparation for those fires. With that, I have no other update information. Any questions I can take?
Any questions? No?
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. All right, so that looks like we will move on to agenda item 3, consent items. Does anyone have an item that they would like to pull? No? I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent items.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion passes. Number 5, we have no presentations and appointments, so we will move on to 6A, discussion and possible action regarding entering into an agreement with Rojas Public Affairs for state and federal legislative advocacy services. Mr. Bartz.
Thank you, Madam President. The Legislative Committee met on January 9th, 2025, and Rojas Public Affairs had representatives here and gave us an overview of the services they provide and how they interact with state and federal agencies to get funding for smaller districts and for cities and everybody else in between. The committee did recommend that they come to the board to give a presentation tonight. And as we look at some of the projects that we will have coming up in the future, it's interesting to see, how these would fit in with something that we do. With our parks projects, we don't have a lot of park funding. We get some general tax funds, approximately $1 million a year towards parks. In the past, it's been used for, that's our governmental fund side, was used to subsidize the enterprise fund for a number of years. But looking to the future, we're going to have some projects. We have quite a large park project that we want to do, and we're probably looking at maybe $30 million for a build out. With the way prices are now, you'd be looking at maybe in excess of $30 million to do something like that. We have received some grants and earmarks in the past. We have $2 million that we received as an appropriation towards the civic complex. We have another $2 million that's coming up for a new reservoir at 6A site, which we'll have about probably $700,000 for the district's portion of that to construct a tank of that size. But we do want to keep our eyes open for future funding sources, and that's why we invited Rojas Public Affairs to come in tonight and talk to us. We have Jaime Rojas here. I believe he's probably going to be the one speaking, and I'd like to invite you guys up.
Good evening, Board President. Technology, yes, thank you. Good evening, Board President and Board Directors. As unmentioned, we've been speaking for quite some time on many of the services that we provide. We're a firm based out of Rancho Cucamonga with offices in San Diego, Sacramento, and Washington, D.C. We've been in business for over 10 years. Our municipal and special districts portion of the business started almost a little over 4 years ago with over $90 million of dollars coming both from state and federal dollars coming back to our clients. As Don mentioned, we represent a variety of cities and a lot of special districts throughout the state of California. One of our goals and primaries is, as a small firm, is providing that white glove service to all our clients. Myself, being the owner of the company, how we usually work is our project manager and ourselves, Ariel P. here, who will speak in a few minutes, handle each client on a weekly and monthly basis. Our goals begin in January as the budget process begins both on the state and federal level. As we know, Governor Newsom just gave his budget analysis and release mid-January, with showing a much improved budget from last year, as we were in a deficit almost $30 billion. With the fires, as the chief had mentioned, we're looking at those dollars kind of dwindling to some extent, going back, and dollars being removed from certain parts of the budget to focus on what's being dealt with in Los Angeles and surrounding areas because of the situation currently happening. In addition to that, what the process, how it works, is two ways. Clients choose us to be either one or two, or in three services: just state, just federal, or both services. We have a team in Sacramento as well. We also have a team in Washington, D.C. How we work is, starting in January, when the process begins both on the federal and state level, we work with the client, sitting down and looking at what capital improvement projects you're looking at to begin or shortly begin. Government looks at shovel-ready projects, and basically what that means is any projects that would begin at a phased process anywhere between 2 to 3 years. Our goal is, after hearing with and understanding the process, is working with staff, looking at what projects, and then depending on your representatives, state and federal, and understanding what they've approved in the previous years, to begin looking and identifying key projects that will successfully be reviewed by the electeds, and as well as picked and chosen for the budget session. For earmarks or community resource grants on the federal level, the process is the same. Beginning March is when we begin hearing from the elected officials on when that budget, of when they're expecting the application process to begin. In regards to state earmarks, between March and April, and changes from year to year depending on a variety of factors, but more importantly on the process and where the budget is in regards to financing. In the process, we also do legislative days or advocacy days, both in DC and in Sacramento. We do the whole planning from beginning to end. During the process that we're doing the applications for you, we're also going through a filtering process with the staff members of each of the elected officials. They in turn even further go through the application process of your projects and make further recommendations prior to sending in the last application, both state and federal. Once we go into Sacramento and once we go into DC on these advocacy trips, we prepare talking points, leave behind information on the projects that we've identified, as well as preparing you to not only meeting with elected officials, but agencies that make sense for your district, both in Sacramento and both in DC. Many clients at the beginning say, why do we want to see agencies? For a variety of reasons. Dollars go not only to local municipalities, but to a lot of the state and federal agencies. Our responsibility to you is trying to find every dollar possible under that couch. Each agency may not have a grant at that current year, but we've been successful at finding, through project managers in each agency, dollars that haven't been used in prior years. So if they identify the projects that we've chosen for that year, they're an additional eye, ears, and an ambassador to the district in wanting to help us in trying to make that project a success. Many times we've seen dollars that haven't been used and applied to current year projects. So in addition to that, we're storytellers. Our responsibility is preparing you as a district, as well as educating the elected officials what you do and how you do it. The process doesn't end in June when we hear if the earmarks and member requests have been chosen. But once they do, is our team further maintains all the way to the end of the year to make sure that once the budgets are signed, mid-October in Sacramento is when the governor usually signs the final project, is that the dollars stay there, that during the next few months, no one tries to take those dollars within the budget, in the budget process. DC is a little different. We're looking at the end of December for the budget to be finalized, but that changes year to year. This year, because of the presidential election, that's been pushed back to almost March. Now you ask, when do we get money, when the money is chosen? On Sacramento, it's usually a quarter after the first year in January. So we're looking at October signage of the budget, first quarter anywhere between January and February. For DC, it's usually about 6 months after the beginning application. So beginning of January, by summer the following year is when we expect receipts of dollars coming through one of the government agencies as a kind of an audit system, and looking at how the project is going, depending on how much time they give us in spending those dollars. Our process again for us is making sure that staff, both on the elected officials and then those agencies are given those dollars to give to us. All information is given to them. They understand exactly where the process is, and looking for a successful project after that. Many times people say, well, can we ask for the same money for the same project in case, in a tiered level? Absolutely. Both Sacramento and DC understand these projects are not one-shot deals. You begin with many times the phase design process. The next phase after a year or two is then actually getting a construction firm or a project managing firm to begin going into depth into that project. And it may take 2 to 3 or even 4 years to finish a project depending on the size and scope of the work. But with us, you'll have a project manager, myself, available at all times. We usually give quarterly reports. We work strictly with staff, but of course accessible to board members. Our responsibility is to make sure that our staff and I and our team work hand in hand in preparation for the policies that you set for the district. So our responsibility is making sure that not only the staff looks great, but as well as the board members as well, and well educated and well prepared going into a lot of the meetings both in Sacramento and DC. I'll stop there and stop talking so much and kind of open to some questions.
All right, questions over here?
I just have a couple comments. I listened to the proposal during the legislative committee, and I thought it was fair for you to present to the whole board. I'm not a big fan of retainers and paying for something and just hoping that you get a product at the end, that you can come up with the grant, or you can come up with something that's going to pay back the $60,000 a year plus some. I mean, we're not a rich community. We voted to increase rates 72% over the next 4 years. I mean, that's a lot of money for a lot of people in the community. It's hard to pay water bills sometimes. I think it would be a better approach for us to look at hiring somebody that looks for grants, and we pay them for writing the grant and then advocating for us to go through the grant process, and at least looking at something like that. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Deborah?
A good chunk of the questions I had were answered in your presentation. But adding to his questions, about how much would it cost to hire an employee in-house to do grant writing?
We couldn't afford to hire an employee in-house to do grant writing. With just a basic employee with expenses, you'd probably be looking at $80,000 to $100,000 a year.
Okay, and how much, do we have an idea of how much grant writers even run to contract with them?
I do not have that answer.
Because that would be the additional question with that. Do you guys do grant writing support?
We don't. What we do, we have partners in the grant writing world that we work with and highly recommend. It depends on, they sometimes use a tiered approach where for X number of dollars they write X number of grants per quarter. or a larger amount of retainer fee for a kind of an all-encompassing as grants come that makes sense for them to write them as they go. So it just depends on the budget of the district. I've seen for us and what we do, we specifically focus on those earmarks on the federal level and on the state member requests, which are dollars coming specifically only through the elected officials. In addition to also opening doors to state agencies and federal agencies who also have grant dollars. So once a grant is submitted, our responsibility then continues to moving forward of developing the relationship, maintaining that relationship with that project manager and agency, and making sure that the story is maintained and told through the process. It's almost squeaky wheel gets the oil. And Mr. Director, you're absolutely right. Our philosophy and the reason I went into this line of work, it's been 35 years plus. I wish I was 25, but I'm not. But and having and running a business, I understand the responsibility we all have, even as a private sector firm. We have a responsibility to the community. And I think the responsibility here, everyone pays taxes. Our responsibility is to bring as much money back from individual taxes from DC and from Sacramento back to a local district. And I know it's always a constant fight on a local level, city, county, and special districts to bring those back dollars. And especially many times elected officials don't understand, even after years in government, how special districts work. They don't understand sometimes the need for capital improvement projects, the need to maintain them. I always look at and compare it to a home. You always have to keep maintaining a home. Painting it, roof, there's leaks, plumbing, and many times that's constant. And it's almost the honey-do list. Our responsibility is to make sure that honey-do list is kept up to date, is maintained with a flow of dollars coming in, and show the best face possible. In addition to one of the things that we started implementing last year is kind of a PR process as well. We also try to bring in the elected officials onto the district as well as their staff for them to see what's tangible and what you do personally. Meeting with the staff, meeting with the board. Not only that, we also submit, once the applications are done, press releases with both quotes from the elected official as well as from the electeds here on the district, so that the community knows what's happening. But also it puts fire underneath the elected official, knowing that the public knows what's being asked for. Our goal this year also is to add another component to it, is putting stories in local newspapers, both here in Sacramento and in DC, with the elected officials being there. For the purpose, again, we're storytellers. Our responsibility, and unfortunately, most people don't understand what many of the special districts do. Our responsibility as storytellers is to explain what exactly the type of service is being provided here, day in and day out, where your tax dollars are going to, and what lean budgets we have, what small bandwidths are there in order to accomplish this great goal. We ourselves look as an extension of the staff. We don't do anything outside without the approval of the general manager, and of course the general manager to his bosses, which is the board as well. So we take that fiduciary duty to heart. It is our responsibility to use those dollars at as best as possible. And I'll make this last comment on that question to give you a kind of a spectrum of how much a state lobbyist monthly retainer is usually about $5,000 to $6,000 per month. For federal, it's somewhere between 7 to 9. So let's go with the 7. Let's go with the 5. That's 12,000. We're already underneath half of that. And I know Don had mentioned to us that dollars were critical here. We understand the neighborhood well. We live just down the hill in Rancho. Hesperia Parks and Rec is one of our clients. We reduced another further $500. So for us, I run a tight ship, and I understand that budgets are important as a business owner, and I understand that you have a fiduciary duty to your community. So we do our best to have our prices as low as possible for us to be able to make the biggest impact as possible.
I'd like to add a little more. On page 94 of our agenda is the Prop 4 climate bond funding and things in that. What type of, this is a challenge, what type of things could you help with doing with those type of things? This is the idea.
Absolutely. I'm going to have Ariel please introduce himself and kind of give into more
Because I
detail
figure
that.
this is something we can then see what, say we can do this, this, and this.
Absolutely. A lot of opportunity for sure.
Awesome, thank you.
Ariel.
Good evening. Thank you for being here and letting us be here too this evening. Going back to the grants real quick, just want to echo, we totally understand, but just know I'm a former mayor of the city of Lakewood, so I know what the grant process is like. What I've learned was in the grant process, you're in a queue. You can only get updates. Our job is to have relationships and knock on the doors. So there's a big difference in knocking on doors and having the relationships with the chief of staffs that I've learned coming from the public sector now in the private sector. That's where I see very beneficial. But going back to your board member, to your conversation on Prop 4, on the climate bond, after California released their budget, there's a couple categories based on fire and parks that you have in this area that we can probably look into some dollars. You know, under the safe drinking, water drought, water resilience, there's 183 million. You know, there's 153 million water, you know, reuse and recycling. You know, going to the wildfire and forest resilience, you know, there's like 59 million in local fire prevention and grants that are out there. Extreme heat mitigation and urban green planning for all your parks that you guys are really looking at to get funded, and outdoor access. So there's money out there during Prop 4. Digging in this a little bit more, I can get more information to you as needed, but just kind of looking overall and getting to understand Phelan and their needs as a client for us to really get down in the weeds and really understand. And that's why it's super important to get the elected officials here and to get us to have boots on the ground to really understand this so we can really dig into these numbers and dig into these definitely monies that are out there.
So creating a two-way communication.
Absolutely.
Flow.
Again, an extension of your staff, and our goal is to make sure we definitely keep in mind, top of mind of having straight communication, but also be available for any questions.
Well, I can tell you, last year I was at Legislative Days, and just went with the CSDA stuff, which is fine and wonderful.
Yeah.
However, felt very packaged and put into this bubble. And I saw Hesperia going off and having meetings on their own far more than what we had just through CSDA. So I liked that. I'll leave it at that for right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
How long have you worked for Hesperia or been under contract for Hesperia?
It's going to be a year in March. So we've gone through the whole process. We're getting ready for them to give us their dates to go do their Sacramento and DC trip as well. I know they've gone through a lot of changes in their general manager position. Robert Hernandez currently who's there. As a matter of fact, our team right now is there for their next board meeting, giving their quarterly report. You were in the process of, we've already identified their projects for next year, and going through kind of the filtering process with the staff of the elected officials, and looking forward to, you know, hopefully bringing them money, but either state, federal, and hopefully both.
So you haven't brought them any money yet? You're
No.
still in the works?
We're still in the works.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll say this much. I know that on the federal level, we're still waiting for that budget to sign. So that's what we're waiting for on Hesperia.
I think with the political landscape in DC, it's going to be pretty tough for the next couple of years.
It is, and having firms like ourselves to be there to guide you is crucial, because the last thing we want to do is have anyone get lost in that maze that's what's happening in DC, as well as Sacramento.
I think no matter who you are, it's going to be tough to get money out of DC.
Yeah, but we're good finders. You're welcome.
So on that note, I did reach out to Director Kelly Gregg of the Hesperia Park and Rec District, and he had nothing but good things to say about what you're doing for them, so.
Thank you, we appreciate
that.
it.
All right, any questions this way?
Maybe this direction. So who have we used in the past for writing grants?
We have, the grants that we've had for some of the smaller projects have been done in-house, and most of those were kind of like you'd probably do with some of your projects, a one-page thing. We've put in for some grants in the past for state with parks, and we got buried in the process. You know, we've missed it by that much every time. Either is based on population, income around the park. So we've missed out on every park grant possible.
And they were all done in-house?
They were done in-house, or, yeah, basically they were done in-house.
Okay. And then this would be to you. So on the 700 million for the park creation and outdoor access, can you give me an idea of what a typical grant allocation would be? So a million?
Absolutely.
200,000?
It can range anywhere between 150,000 to 3 million,
Okay.
somewhere in that park range. And it depends how strong the project is. But more importantly, our philosophy, which is different from others, is we use the same projects both for state and federal. And the reason for that is not many times, all the time, on the state level, they'll ask us, well, where else are you getting dollars? So we reciprocate, say, from the federal, and the federals will ask the same question from the state. And then we use the power of that caucus, the assembly members, the state senators, and then also House of Reps and the 2 U.S. senators to kind of use their team and staff to be able to help one another push those. DC helps us and their staff down here in Sacramento, and the Sacramento staff also helps in submitting letters of support as well. So it's a win-win situation in pushing. Instead of pushing 10 different projects, we try to focus on 2 to 3 different projects that both the electeds and their staff on the state and federal level can all work together on that. For us, that's been more successful than shooting from the hip in regards to projects solely in DC and projects solely in Sacramento, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm familiar with advocacy, and in my previous employers had good results using firms such as yours to get grants and funding for projects across the board. When we look at hiring staff in-house, you got to look at their benefited rate, and they're not going to have the established relationships that you do because you're in both the state and federal areas building those relationships. So you basically have the ability to open the door other than just somebody behind a computer reviewing an application process that, going through and looking at the projects. And the other benefit I see is you understand and will guide the district on how to present a project. I see the benefit of, no, we don't want to move forward with this project because you need to develop more plans. You need to have this in place prior to going for that because we already know it's not going to potentially go through. Or you'll guide us, you're almost there on this project. Just do these additional things and you have a good chance. So thank you.
Absolutely. I'll add one more thing to that is we use staff on the elected side and also on the agency side to also guide us. Those relationships are so crucial, as you mentioned. They'll tell us, and we set up pre-meetings for them to tell us exactly what they're looking for and exactly what they don't want to be seen in applications. That's important. And those pre-meetings are also important because they begin to remember when we submit those applications, they already know who we are. And they already have a preview of what the projects are going to be submitted. So that's important in the process because they're getting thousands of projects up and down the state. So for us, again, the storytellers, the PR behind it is important outside of the application process itself.
So we were talking about some of the grants we'd put in for in the past. We've received some money from the congressman. We've received some money from the county, which has been very helpful. So we're probably in the range of $5 million that we've received. All of that is within the last few years. Prior to that, when we applied for some of the grants that we talked about, I hadn't really thought too much about it. We did not have a park master plan at all. And that was one of the things that we needed in order to get some of the grants. And we do have some, what I would consider about as shovel-ready as you can get. We've been working on our park plans for a number of years, along with the Civic Plaza. So we actually have projects that would fall into that category, I think, shovel-ready, maybe less than 3 to 4 years, depending on permitting from the county, but we might get some assistance from that. Where the funding would come from, probably what we'd be going after, the majority of would be for parks. And I would see maybe either a 50-50 split or a 60-40 split. Parks, which has funding, has reserves, and could be used for this type of thing, would probably be $40,000 a year from the parks. and 20,000 from water. So you'd have a lesser amount coming from the enterprise fund where it has to do with the rates. But I do know that we have some projects that might fall into the category for water. And when you start talking about the fire, right now that's I think the hot ticket, so to speak, for funding possibilities. We have some things that we've started looking for grants on our own for. A couple of them would be like a helipad where they can pick up water, a reservoir at one of our sites. They can pick up water closer to the mountains and put it right on there, as opposed to having an extra maybe 10 to 15 minute round trip down to the aqueduct. It would speed that up. We've already started looking at that on the staff end of things, but we just don't have the outreach for going after grants like that. Another one came up in our engineering committee last night, and we're talking about our electrical panels. We have our 10-year capital plan that we look at, and we budget accordingly. Our rates are set based on our 10-year capital plan and our operating costs. The cost of the panels, which we've seen where we actually approved purchasing one a year in advance, because it takes a year to 2 years sometimes to get these panels. We have about 10 more panels to do. And was it 10, Sean, or did I under it?
16.
16. And we were about $8 million for that. They're about almost $500,000 a piece for those panels. Something like that could potentially be worked in some of the water resilience and even the fire safety. I mean, we've had them go up in flames recently over the past couple of years, and we've replaced them. And we have a 10-year plan to do that. It would be nice to have an opportunity to look at some funding possibilities to get these projects so we don't have to put those on the ratepayer, because it is part of the cost of operation. I think that's all I have.
Okay. Any follow-up questions?
I'd like to hear from Peter, because he might have some good input, possibly.
Of course.
I just figured from the public would be a good idea.
Before I ask my questions, a couple of thoughts. I would say that initially my reaction was very similar to Director Hayes. I don't like spending money and not having it come, like not knowing where it's coming from, that it's definitely coming back. That whole nebulous, that's a scary situation to be in. At the other hand, I also think it's not a ton of money, and I am aware that in America today, you have to spend money to get money. There is no standing around doing nothing and money falls from the sky. You have to put it out there. So I'm kind of on both sides. That said, I also am aware that Sheep Creek Water Company hired a company to go seek out and write grants, and that was a miserable failure. There is not one grant that they even identified. I know it was several thousand a month that they were paying for it. I don't even know if they're paying. I've been meaning to ask, but I haven't. But I know that they did it, they spent the money, and nothing has come from it. So I'm a little biased against the grant thing, just because I've seen firsthand how easily that can fail. So I did have a couple of questions. I was curious how much interaction there's already been between you guys and the district over the projects. Like, I know we have projects, right? We have a lot of projects. Have those already been sort of looked at and like, yeah, we agree these are things that we can chase, or is it still in the nebulous, we can chase projects, we have projects, right? So to me, I want to be able to say, like, maybe we have an initial investment and sit down and like really review the projects before we do a full we're jumping in with both feet kind of thing. That would be my initial tendency. So that would be my question. How much review has there already been of our projects to know where it's going forward? The last thing that I would say is, I am just looking around. There is so much growth. There is so much change happening in our community at record, lightning fast pace. It seems to me like it would be wise to get ourselves in front of the governing bodies that have money and are sort of in control of the process, because growth will happen to us, change will happen to us, and certainly one of my favorite things about the park is that I love that we are trying to fashion a community, right? We're just sort of this nebulous area where there are a bunch of people live, and it's saying, okay, let's start to fashion a center that people can come to. Let's make this a home and not just a place where people live. And so for me, this seems like a good way to continue to pursue that. So those are my thoughts, my one question. Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer the question of the projects. We have not talked to them about many of the water projects. Kind of the water projects we think we have handled for what we have budgeted and what we can afford in our budget to do. The one with the electrical panels came up in discussions with staff and the engineering committee, actually as of yesterday. We did discuss several times the park projects that we've had ongoing, our park complex here, going back probably 6 months ago when we initially talked to them at I believe it was a CSDA conference, about, would this type of project fit in and what could we do? At that point, they actually put in for us, did a quick write-up. They had, I think, a day and a half to put this together and submitted it. There wasn't any money available, but they said, we're not going to charge you. And if money comes back and something comes up and something gets funded, you're already in the queue for that. So they've looked at the project. They don't have the full details and the breakdown of what the costs and everything are, but they do understand what we're looking at. Did I describe that accurately from your perspective?
Yes, and we rely on staff to be able to give us those numbers. Our responsibility is put it packaging together and go through the process of filtering until the application is due. So time-wise, we're right in the perfect time to be able to submit those. For us, and working with Don in the past 6 months, as Don mentioned, we helped submit a federal earmark with limited time, but the relationship got built with the staff. And those are key for coming back this year. And they actually gave us some feedback, which was, they wanted to come and visit. They also wanted to understand what the master plan was in general. And as Don Master said, that master plan is crucial, because instead of going from one year to the next year of just throwing projects up there and seeing what sticks, that master plan kind of sets the tone for years to come of what projects we're looking for and adding revenue to make sure that that plan goes into effect.
Can I ask one more question?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I was distracted by the screen.
What's in the way? This is just a quick question. I was just looking at the timeline in the presentation. So my curiosity was, if the board approved this, are we, is this we're in hyper mode, we approve this and then you're going to try to get this done this year? Or are we starting this with the goal of, okay, this is starting and then next year is when we're, this right now? Okay.
No, those are great questions. It's right now. State is due, those applications for member requests is due by April. We'll know sometime in the next few months exactly when. And federal earmarks sometime in March. And we won't know until, and each office is different, but sometime between the second to last week of March is when they're due. So we have, the timelines are set, but we're able to make those things. So we'll know by June if we've been allocated dollars, and then the fund begins kind of like a rodeo to hold on to make sure no one takes those dollars during the budget process at the end of October and the end of the year on the federal level. So it's a full year process, and we begin again in January for the following year. And then the dollars kind of, Sacramento, if we get dollars, we'll receive them first quarter of the following year, and federally by the summer of next year. And we'll still in rotation, already starting the application process for the next following budget cycle. So the start is immediate.
Okay.
Yeah, also to address, Peter, your question, kind of, how do you feel this is going? You get this project rolling, you have your meetings with them. This is a month-to-month contract. I'm not saying that you sign up for 1 month and if you don't like what happens that month, you're done. But you would see how the progress is on this project. The board would be involved and review after maybe quarterly and say, where are we at? Do we want to continue doing this? Is this something we don't think we're getting our money's worth? And that, the board has the option to stop that at any point. So you're not locked in for 1 year at a time or 5 years with this.
We're one of the rare firms that does that. And I think going back to fiduciary duties, we're confident in the work that we do. Do we get dollars every year at every time? No. Do we get dollars in the long term? Yes. And that's the philosophy. We tell clients upfront, you know, we don't promise dollars immediately. It may happen, it may not happen, it may happen on one level, state or federal, sometimes it happens on both. But the process, and you'll see the quality of work, how we do it, the relationships that we build with you, the process of advocacy days, and also on top of that, we also help you with legislation. We work with key staff with CSDA, Aqua, our relationships on the Hill, our relationship in Sacramento, pushing, stopping legislations that get impact the district. So you're not only looking at us as dollars, but also on the legislation front. So if you need to testify, letters of support, we're there for you in case you're not there. If you are, we prep you, we walk you, handhold you. That's our specialty. If you tell us how to do water or how to build a park, I have no idea. That's not our expertise. But our expertise is guiding you through the safari of Sacramento and DC.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any
Thank you.
follow-up questions? No? Over here? No? All right. Well, if there are no further questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
I will move that we hire him.
I'll second.
Right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
All opposed and hope I'm wrong in the end.
Thank you. With that, the motion passes. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll see you in the office tomorrow.
We'll have our working group say, I'll just say one lasting word. Thank you for your trust on us. As I said, pricing month to month, you'll see the quality of work of not only myself, not only of Ariel, your project manager, but it's a whole team effort that we work on. So we look forward to working with all of you, the staff, and appreciate the trust level in approving the contract.
Did the board approve the $5,500 a month, or did you grind them down to $5,000 a month?
Well, he said
Okay,
it's
okay,
We're good at the
$3,500 a
five.
month
Yeah.
is wonderful.
I think at 5, so you see our work, and the quality of work that it is, and the comfort level of the great team that we've put together over the years. So we appreciate and honor that. We're here to work for you and the community. So we appreciate that honor. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Be safe out there on the highway down.
Likewise, thank you.
All right, moving on to item 6B, update on district projects.
George, are you ready for this one?
Sure. Yes, Mr. Burks. All right. Madam President, so we have updates on the Civic Center project, the Phelan Park expansion, and the enhancement project. I'll start with the Civic Center project. Pending county approval really is a small process for the landscape plans. And really the County Sheep Creek road dedication of 52 feet. And that's on the 3 parcels for the improvements on Sheep Creek Road. That's a submittal, plan check, and then notarizing those documents. The plans are there. We're steps away from being ready. We're finalizing the bid documents for legal counsel's review, and that's the only item that's really pending. The question was brought up on contracting for a construction manager for the project and those services. Those questions were asked of Cal OES, and it took us a bit to schedule a meeting because of the holidays and the availability of staff and the state. But the questions that we had weren't quite asked, and that was whether we can just move forward with selecting a construction management firm through professional services, through our purchasing policy, or would we have to go out and solicit? And what we've read, and we've read it several times, and even speaking with the representative of the Cal OES, we met those conditions, but it wasn't quite clear. It was based on interpretation. So we felt it was safer just to move forward and soliciting for those services. We are finalizing the scope of work for that. We will be bringing that to the board to solicit for those services, probably in the next meeting, no later than the last meeting in February. And then right immediately after this, we would then solicit for the Civic Center project. So we're there. It's always something, so, but God knows we're there. Any questions on that first off?
We're this close.
Yeah, so close. Phelan Park expansion. And this is on the 14-acre park expansion. We had the Planning Commission, San Bernardino, approve the project, and we were just waiting for the Board of Supervisors to approve and to issue the NOD, the Notice of Termination. So then we can move forward with the Joshua Tree mitigation. Now, I reported this at the last meeting on the Joshua Tree. And since then, we've met with, let's just say, a coalition that was put together and spearheaded by High Desert Water District and their public affairs and government about these Joshua trees. Because there is an opportunity to provide comments for utilities and let's say developments and cities on these mitigations. I believe if I didn't mention this, and I didn't look at my notes, but currently we have a 40-foot buffer for Joshua trees that we cannot encroach without ITP, which is the incidental take permit. It's now grown to 185 feet. And a lot of questions were brought up about this. And one example is that you can have a tree on your property and just say you have a mitigation, but the property adjacent would have to mitigate that tree on somebody else's property. So it really didn't make any sense whether they paid the fees to mitigate that or to protect it. But if you want to build a house and there's a Joshua tree just on the other side on your neighbor's property, that's the big question. So a lot of questions were brought up. A coalition was built put together to kind of bring those questions in public comment with the commission, with Fish and Wildlife. Those comments are, I believe it's at the end of February. So Mojave Water Agency kind of took the lead in this as the bigger voice for many of the districts up here. Bighorn Desert View is part of it. You know, all the Joshua trees on the foothills on this side of on the high side of the high desert are affected by this. I did mention that the fees were being increased January 1st on the current plan. They did increase, but the increase of those fees were based on and I've never heard of this, but it's an index, implicit price deflator index of like 1.7%. So for us, because we earned that higher fee for mitigation on those trees, what $5,000 for a tree that's 5 meters or larger would be increased by 1.7%. But coming July 1st, there's a price increase of that has no index. It's just whatever that fee is. So that's what's being discussed currently with Mojave and at the state level and everybody that's affected by the conservation plan. With that being said, once we attain that NOD, we will immediately consult with our biologist, RCA, our consultant, to prepare the mitigations. At the same time, working with the assigned environmental biologists with the state to develop what this mitigation is going to look like. What trees are affected and what trees are going to be protected and which trees are going to be relocated based on the redesign of our site plan for the 14-acre park. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We're going to move forward with that NOD. Once we figure that out, then I guess we can breathe easy as long as those fees are paid. They said you could be grandfathered, you cannot be grandfathered in just because you have an application in and you've been assigned an environmentalist. So pay the fees, and we don't have to worry about June 30th when they're proposing to adopt this plan. So it's not in stone, but they can kick it down a few more months for more discussions. So there is a public comment in late February. There's also the proposed amendment plan in April and additional public comment, and then they'll bring it to the commission on June 30th. Any questions on that?
Just a comment that the overly controlled from outside sucks. I wish we had more control of our own choices.
I guess they don't really understand how it affects utilities. And what was communicated to us in high desert water, there are trees everywhere. They're beautiful big trees. And they'll have a utility, sewer, water within feet of that Joshua tree. And the tree's healthy. Like, they're proposing to have the state come down and visit, and probably none have come down here to visit, to see this, right? The commission, that's what they're recommending. Those that prepare their plan, well, they're the ones that probably have come out here, but they want to see Joshua trees. In my opinion, we have Joshua Tree National Park. They're protected. Check those out, right? With that, I can jump on to the Phelan Park expansion enhancement project.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question?
Oh, yeah, please.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand the agencies. So you said there's a meeting in February, a meeting in April, and a meeting in June.
Yes.
Where can I go to make public comments?
You could do it online.
All Fish and Wildlife?
Fish and Wildlife, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
In February, April, and June.
February, their last meeting in February, the last meeting in April, and their last meeting in June. They're going to address the Joshua Tree Conservation Plan. Thank you. And I totally invite you all to participate. We had discussed whether we were going to provide a comment, and most likely we will, with the guidance of Mojave and those that are affected. There's a big push for this.
Is this by any chance something that the Rojas might be able to help us with a bit too?
I'm not sure, but I can say that the county should be involved in this,
Yes.
because if the county wants to maintain a road and there's a Joshua tree within however many feet, they're going to
Yeah.
be affected too. Maybe the roads will go away.
How does this affect the non-maintained ones on top of it?
Yeah, it's ridiculous what they're asking for, and we need to comment, and along with getting the county, and maybe we should talk, I know George has talked to Sam about that too, Sam Shoup, and
Yeah, we did meet with Sam last week in our monthly meeting, and he did comment that the Board of Supervisors, those that are affected in this region, are concerned about this. So they'll be there to kind of put their few cents into this. So yeah, it's quiet, but it's something that needs to be looked at. So I'm sure there's going to be some movement up here in the high desert. The Phelan Park Enhancement Project. Today, we received a third plan check, which was not anticipated, based on the comments from the second plan check that was submitted. And that was to mitigate the flood zone elevation of the greenhouse and the shed. They needed it above flood zone, which we came up with a solution. But there are comments that they should have caught at the second plan check, if not the first plan check. And that is boundary dimension and bearing. And it's very petty. And it's kind of frustrating. With that being said, we are meeting with the county on the ARPA funding that we would like to get an extension on issuing. Well, what we need to do is to kind of issue a PO or a signed contract to appropriate those funds from the county. We extended that to March 30th. Now, we were working backwards with our calendar, our schedule. That should have been this week. We should have been out to bid on that. But with that being said, and the resubmittal and pressing the county to look at the minor changes, we're going to discuss whether we're going to extend another month. Now, the project needs to be completed by the December 31st of 2025. Is that correct, Jen? 2026. Oh, 2026. But our target is 2025. I actually feel a lot better about that. Because we're going to press the contractor to get this project done, right? But it's just a formality. It has to go on your agenda. It has to get approved. They just need that commitment of those funds so it doesn't go anywhere else. So we're going to meet with the county tomorrow on the ARPA funding. The ARPA funding, I just want to add, is $457,000. I think that's all I got. Bid documents for that, it's in review. The legal counsel should be getting that and reviewing it. This been more of a priority about the plans and getting the package together. So now we're at a point we can just move forward with the bid documents. That's all I got. Any questions?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
That was a lot.
It is. It's fun.
All right, moving on to agenda item 7, committee reports, engineering.
Yeah, I'd like to report engineering committee met last night at 5 p.m. We went through the committee roles and responsibilities. We were updated on the OSD recharge study project by Mojave Water Agency. We had some discussions regarding the water system with the pumps and well services agreement, a 10-year tank rehabilitation and maintenance service, water quality, service line replacement program update, and other repairs and replacements, updates, and maintenance. We discussed the Smithson Springs update, and then we talked about state regulation updates. And then review of the current projects, Future Well 18, Future Well number 16, and Tank 6A. And then staff provided some reports on everything. So that's what we did for engineering committee. And a lot of these items will come back before the board as updates and projects. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance committee?
Finance Committee met yesterday, and we discussed the disbursements, and then we went over the quarterly report in detail.
All right. Legislative?
We met last week and went over the proposal that we heard tonight, and that was it.
Okay. And parks, we also went over the 10-year capital plan budget, and then just got a few updates on upcoming events, and the event calendar will be coming out soon, but we're pretty much sticking to a lot of the same activities that we're all used to seeing. And solid waste and recycling.
Solid waste and recycling. So we reviewed the solid waste programs and events for this year. We were updated on the uniform collection for the 3 cans that they provide. We were updated on the solid waste rates and where they may be, and that will come before the board. And then staff provided reports prior to review of the action items. Yeah, and that was basically it. And then we set the agenda for the next, or the time for the next meeting.
All right, thank you.
Oh, we also stopped going from monthly, went back to quarterly now.
Okay, thank you. All right, item 8, staff and general managers report. Anything to add?
I'd just like to draw your attention. We have the take action brief from CSDA. We're going to start providing that. There's a lot of good information on the CSDA website. And if you don't have a login for that, we can get you a login and you have access to everything legislative on down the line, even rental car discounts. You know, they have everything in kind of a one-stop shop, including all of the seminars and meetings that they have. So if you do not have that and you'd like to log in, Amy can get you the information on that.
They have on-demand webinars, the previous ones they've done that are really helpful. And they're all free for members to watch.
Yeah, you can get a lot of the standard ones that are required. You can get them for free on there, and you can do them at your pace.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, number 9, directors' reports. We will start with Director Hayes.
Nothing to report.
All right, Director Phillips. Vice
Nothing to
President
report.
Phillips.
Nothing to report.
Director Mills.
Nothing to report.
Director Snyder.
Nothing to report other than the 2 committee meetings.
All right, and I have nothing new to report. So we will move on to 10, correspondence and information. Ms. Williams?
Yes, we have some of our flyers in here. How to pay your bill online through your bank for your bill pay. How to find leaks in your house. We have an upcoming community cleanup and free tire day on March 8th from 8 to 12 at the CR&R yard. And that is it.
Thank you very much. All right, number 11, review of action items. Were there any prior meeting action items
There were none.
and current meeting action items?
I believe there were none.
I have a suggestion.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, with all the advocacy and supportive stuff, maybe the staff could provide the board with letters that we need to sign and send up supporting certain things that would show support, and help the cause. I think individual letters would have more prudence. It shows instead of just the whole board. I don't know, that's just food for thought. We can do that. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right, and then number 12, setting agenda for next meeting. We have the board workshop on February 11th, and then the regular board meeting on February 12th. Does anyone have anything they want to add to the February 12th meeting? No? All right. So with no further business before the board, we will adjourn at 6:06 PM. Thank you.